Morning. How's everyone? Good afternoon. Today is a troubling day for taxpayers and for Canadians who are right now out of a job. The Finance Minister has confirmed that the Liberals are going to break a significant election promise and now borrow far more than the $10 billion every year to pay for their out-of-control spending. Of course, when it comes to spending other people's money, the Liberals seem to not be able to help themselves. C'est une journée triste pour les contribuables canadiens. Le ministre des Finances a confirmé que les libéraux vont briser une promesse électorale et emprunter plus de 10 milliards de dollars cette année pour financer leurs nouvelles dépenses. This is not a plan for job creation, nor is it a plan to control spending. This is a recipe for waste and mismanagement. Sadly, the Liberal government is rolling out now every excuse in the book to justify what we're seeing as bad economic management. They're trying to justify breaking a campaign promise by somehow suggesting it's not their fault, or worse, because they don't think it actually matters. But the Liberals have to face facts. They promised during the election campaign to borrow, in their words, a modest $10 billion to pay for what they intended to do. And that's what Canadians know. But Canadians also know that $10 billion is a lot of money. The problem is, with the Liberals, I don't think the Liberals know that no matter how much money they actually borrow, and no matter what the reason they're borrowing it for, they actually are going to have to pay it back. But Canadians understand that. I have a newsflash for Justin Trudeau that I think he's starting to figure out, and that is that budgets don't actually balance themselves. And of course, now they're going to have to repeal a conservative balanced budget law in order to borrow even more money. That's because we now know they plan to continue borrowing more and more and more money every year going forward, and that they have no plan at all on how to pay any of that borrowed money back. I find this reckless, irresponsible, and it's entirely the result of the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister not being able to make the decisions that they need to make today to respect taxpayers' money. The Liberals inherited a balanced budget because of good Conservative economic management. In fact, Finance Canada has certified that the federal Treasury was left in balance, and they were left with a $1 billion surplus when they took office. En fait, les fonctionnaires du Finance Canada ont certifié que le Trésor fédéral avait un excédent budgétaire d'1 milliard de dollars quand les libéraux ont pris les pouvoirs. And now we've seen that they actually blew that budget in less than 100 days, solely because of new spending, and not even spending that was in their platform, but brand new spending. And no matter what the theatrics that they employ, they cannot blame their broken promises and runaway spending on a slowing economy. After all, they've already promised to borrow $10 billion before they even got out of the gate. And how can $10 billion not be enough? Frankly, it brings into question the competence of the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister. The reality now is that it is not a time to spend. Based on slow economic growth, it's a time for the Finance Minister to talk about controlling spending. Canadians who have lost their jobs across the country, everywhere from Quebec to Alberta to Atlantic Canada, are not looking for a bailout or even a handout, but they're looking for the opportunity to actually get back to work. They want the government to be on their side and to create opportunities for them, to be a business-friendly government. Unfortunately, what we see now is a Liberal plan for uncontrolled, permanent new spending that it's going to not create jobs, just create a larger government. The fact that we're actually here today, after hearing what the Finance Minister said today, we're here today to talk about how much money the Liberals will borrow instead of talking about what they're going to do to get Canadians back to work and control their spending. And because they have no interest in controlling spending, when it comes time to pay back all this borrowed money, the only way they're going to be able to do it is to increase taxes. We've already seen it, whether it's through rolling back tax-free savings accounts or their hike to job-killing payroll taxes. We've seen the blunder with the middle-class tax cut that's actually going to cost the Treasury money, the proposed new carbon tax that's layered on top of already existing carbon taxes. But heureusement, les Canadiens pourront compter sur les partis conservateurs. Et seulement les partis conservateurs vont demander des comptes au gouvernement, vous qui nous sommes la voix des contribuables. I can tell you that Canadians can count on the Conservative Party, and only the Conservative Party, to be the voice of taxpayers. We're going to push the Liberals to live within our means. Conservatives will look out for all of those people across the country that are also living within their own means and ask for a real plan to create jobs, not just more boring, but a plan for jobs. And we're going to keep fighting to keep money in the pockets of Canadians, because at the end of the day, someone is actually going to have to pick up the tab for all of this Liberal spending, and it's going to be regular Canadians. Thank you for being here today, and I'm going to hand it over to Gérard to say a few remarks. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à vous tous. Eh bien, écoutez, le moins qu'on puisse dire, c'est que le gouvernement libéral vient de se faire dire en pleine face qu'il a complètement perdu le contrôle des dépenses publiques. Une chose est certaine, c'est que le gouvernement n'était pas prêt. Le Parti libéral n'était pas prêt à diriger le Canada, et on s'en rend compte aujourd'hui. Pendant des mois et des mois, le gouvernement, au cours des 100 premiers jours, a dépensé des milliards de dollars qu'il n'avait pas, on fait des annonces qui n'étaient pas budgétées, et le résultat aujourd'hui, c'est qu'on est en déficit 2 fois plus élevé que le tout petit déficit qu'eux-mêmes avaient annoncé, ce qui était déjà une mauvaise chose. Je vous rappelle que nous, les conservateurs, avons laissé la maison nette. Selon la revue financière du ministère des Finances, d'avril à novembre 2015, un excédent budgétaire de 1 milliard de dollars. Nous, les conservateurs, avons laissé la maison nette avec un surplus de 1 milliard. Aujourd'hui, Parti libéral, ça veut dire quoi? Un déficit de près de plus de 20 milliards de dollars une fois que le budget sera déposé. Il est temps que le gouvernement reprenne le contrôle des finances publiques, ce qu'il n'a pas fait depuis son élection.
In 2009, there was the price of oil was 3 times what it is right now, approximately. People were losing their jobs, and your government ran a $54 billion deficit. Why was it good then, and it wouldn't be good now?
Well, first of all, we're not yet in a recession. We also didn't take the reins as they are today with a balanced budget, a surplus, and with a promise to spend $10 billion right out of the gate, which has already been blown. So these guys have come in with a promise of spending $10 billion when there wasn't a recession, there was still growth in the economy, and now we know that there will be much more.
Why was it better to break your promise and run 44?
The budget. There is no anchor, there's no fiscal anchor left in this government. They have abandoned their commitment to balance the budget in 4 years. So they're already saying today they will not balance the budget. We know already that even their projections today with what the cost of oil will be are going to be out of touch. So we can expect to see a much higher deficit. Right out of the gate, their $10 billion commitment has been blown. The economy is starting to slow. And let's not forget that there are over 200 election promises are actually not promises to stimulate growth.
So would you cut Ms. Ambrose, what would you say that they need to control spending? Would you stop the infrastructure spending that they're promising? What would you cut?
Well, first of all, infrastructure spending can help with stimulus, but let's remember that's going to take at least a year to kick in. They've been in power since October. They've pushed no infrastructure money out the door. There's people suffering without jobs, and they have not made any of the changes that need to be made to EI to support those people who are unemployed. They could have made those changes right out of the gate in October, November. They could also push infrastructure money out the door as early as November, and they haven't. We're still waiting. We're still seeing no money on the table actually spending money for infrastructure, and they're not saying they're going to control spending. Now that we know the economy is going to start to slow, and we're going to see, as the finance minister said today, a potential $18 billion hole right out of the gate. He didn't come before us today and say, well, we're going to focus on stimulus measures like infrastructure, we're going to support those who need it on EI, but we may reevaluate some of our campaign promises that are not good for business, that are not going to create jobs. Many of their policies are not policies that will do anything to further investment. You have to remember it's ones where they are just growing the size of government. For instance, $2.5 billion pledge for climate change projects overseas. Perhaps it may not be the right time to do that. Maybe they want to invest that money here at home in projects that could create jobs. Let's remember also, it's not just the price of oil. I mean, one of the major concerns with the downturn in the economy right now is primarily because of the reduction in business investment. That's one of the reasons we're seeing slow growth in our economy, is lack of business investment. This is not a business-friendly government. They are bringing in policies of uncertainty in the oil and gas sector, uncertainty because of now musing about bringing in a national carbon tax on top of already existing provincial carbon taxes. We've seen their middle-class tax cut is now going to cost the Treasury money. Businesses are nervous, and we're seeing a large reduction in business investment. What this finance minister should be doing and the prime minister should be doing is creating investment confidence. Canada is no longer seen as a place that people want to start a business or invest in business. That's the problem the government has in front of them. It's not just because of the slowdown. It's not just because of oil. What we've seen is a huge reduction in business investment in Canada in the last few months.
Do you expect, we already know the number is going to be large. We already know the deficit number is going to be large in the budget. For the budget, do you envision asking the Conservative senators to block the budget bill? We don't know exactly what's going to be in the budget, but we obviously know it's going to be a massive deficit that you obviously already don't agree with. Would you ask Conservative senators to block it in the upper chamber?
What I'm going to do is ask the finance minister to bring forward a plan in the budget that will actually be business-friendly and will create jobs. Instead of imposing more taxes, more payroll taxes, more carbon taxes, and putting in place permanent spending, which will be on the books in perpetuity with no plan to pay it back, he needs to control his spending. They need to get their spending under control. If we know we're going into a slow growth period, they should not be piling on more spending that is not going to stimulate the economy.
So about that spending, Madam Ambrose, about that spending, you were saying it a minute ago. This is not a moment to spend. We should not be spending now. So
no, what I said was, let me be clear. What I said was, the only spending this government should be doing is on programs and projects that will create stimulus.
And that includes EI for you, for Alberta, and that includes infrastructure. Is that what you're saying?
I think infrastructure is one way that you can stimulate growth in the economy, but let's not forget, that won't kick in for a year. So the government could today signal things like, we are not going to be moving forward with new taxes at this time. They could signal we're going to move forward with all of the support necessary to implement the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is an important message for the business community to hear. The sad thing is they are not sending the signals to the business community of certainty. They're not saying we support pipelines and a safe way to get oil to market. They are not saying we're going to hold off on any sort of new taxes, payroll taxes, carbon taxes. They are sending the wrong messages to business, and that is only going to create a further reduction in business investment in this country.
Monsieur Deltell, pourquoi tenter de stimuler l'économie en investissant n'est pas une bonne idée pourtant, alors que les conservateurs l'ont déjà fait?
Bien, comme Mme Ambrose vient juste de l'expliquer, c'est un des sujets qui doit être mis de l'avant, mais pas uniquement ce seul sujet-là, puis le faire de façon raisonnée et raisonnable, et de façon aussi réaliste et responsable, ce qui n'a pas été le cas jusqu'à présent. Ce gouvernement-là nous a démontré au cours des 100 premiers jours qu'il dépensait des milliards de dollars qu'il n'avait pas, comme si de rien n'était. Mais le résultat aujourd'hui, c'est qu'on a un déficit technique là, qui est de presque 20 milliards de dollars, le double de ce qu'ils avaient annoncé, puis ils n'ont pas encore rien annoncé. Ça va être beau tantôt, là. Alors, il est temps qu'ils reprennent contrôle des dépenses publiques.
M. Deltell, qui sont en train de faire un genre de Paul Martin d'eux-mêmes et de dire, regardez, le déficit va être vraiment gros. Finalement, dans 2 ans, ils vont dire, regardez comme on est bon. Le déficit n'est pas si gros que ça, finalement. Bien,
j'ose espérer qu'ils ne pousseront pas le cynisme à ce point-là. Mais moi, je me souviens d'un Paul Martin qui avait une approche qui était beaucoup plus sérieuse concernant les dépenses publiques. Il n'a pas fait les bons choix nécessairement, mais toujours est-il qu'il a fait attention quand on a le temps de faire des dépenses. C'est qu'il est totalement à l'opposé de ce que le gouvernement-là a fait depuis le début. Depuis 100 jours, on a vu ce gouvernement-là dépenser. On en parlait tout à l'heure. Les milliards de dollars qui ont été annoncés à Paris pour aider les énergies vertes dans le tiers-monde, c'est pas vilain en soi, mais est-ce qu'on a les moyens de le faire au moment où on se parle? Pas vraiment.
One more, please, guys. Ultimately, what angers you the most here? Because your message is a little unclear. Is it the spending? Is it the direction? Or what is it about?
It's the lack of direction. The bottom line is that this government, whether today or in their platform, has absolutely nothing to attract business investment and bring business investment back to Canada. And that's why the economy is suffering, because we see a reduction in business investment. Businesses have lost confidence in this government. They've lost confidence in the finance minister, that he actually has a plan that's business-friendly and job-friendly. And that's the problem. We saw today, again, just more dithering.
Number doesn't really bother you, or what is it?
The deficit number should bother all Canadians, because what we saw today is that we are going into the following year with a huge hole, $18 billion deficit. On top of that, we know they've already blown their commitment to spend another $10 billion. What I would have liked to hear from the finance minister today is that we're going to control our spending, and we're going to reevaluate some of the things in our platform that actually will do nothing good for the economy, but add more growth to government. And we heard none of that today. So they're not going to control their spending, and they're not moving forward with any ideas to stimulate the economy or bring business investment back to this country.
Question on the Senate thing.
Last one, please.
On
One
the
more.
Senate, can you answer the earlier question whether or not you're going to ask your senators to block this budget, because you have the power to do that?
What we're going to do as a Conservative party, and as a party that believes in responsible spending and low taxes and balanced budgets, is we're going to push this government for a real plan. They had announced today an Economic Advisory Council. They won't be back to Canadians for almost a year. So you telling me that the Prime Minister of Canada and the Finance Minister of Canada have no ideas between now and the end of the year on how to grow the economy? I mean, that is unacceptable to the literally hundreds of thousands of people.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.